Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, cha, bonjour, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jedley. Welcome to Reading with Your Kids. We're coming to you from the beautiful, wonderful, historical neighborhood of Reedville, located in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so very happy and so honored that you join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. You can join us in this mission by telling all of your family and friends about the show and letting them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network. And they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Good Pods, Apple Podcasts, Podcast Addict, Audible, CastBox, Player FM, wherever you find your favorite shows. Two amazing guests for you today. First up, Kate Messner. She is here to celebrate her middle grade novel. It's called The Trouble with Heroes. And later in the show, Christopher Silas Neal will be here to celebrate his new picture book, We Leap Together. Hey, parents, grandparents, caregivers, and teachers. Are you looking for a fun way to teach important values to your kids? Check out Timothy'sLessons.com.
It's Timothy's Lessons. Timothy's Lessons in good values. It's Timothy's Lessons. Timothy's Lessons in good values. Teaching life lessons to his friends. It's Timothy's Lessons. Forward thinking activities. It's Timothy's Lessons. Building confidence and mental strength. It's Timothy's Lessons. Timothy's Lessons in good values. It's Timothy's Lessons. Timothy's Lessons in good values. Wonderful fun sing-along songs. It's Timothy's Lessons. Important lessons on key values. It's Timothy's Lessons. Children's books and uplifting stories. It's Timothy's Lessons. Timothy's Lessons in good values. It's Timothy's Lessons. Timothy's Lessons in good values.
Check it out today, Timothy'sLessons.com. Hey, my friends, here's something to think about. What if mistakes weren't something to fear, but something to celebrate? In It's Okay Not to Know by Brenda Doe, young readers meet Bink, a lovable little monster who worries they're not good enough when they struggle or make mistakes. But then, Bink discovers a powerful truth. Every uh-oh is an opportunity. Every question is a chance to grow. And every child deserves to know perfection isn't what makes you special. Curiosity, courage, and self-love do. A must-read for parents, teachers, and anyone who wants to help kids build resilience and confidence. Get your copy of It's Okay Not to Know by Brenda Doe today, because learning begins when we stop fearing the unknown. Are you looking for a creative way to bond with your kids? Let me tell you all about Drawing with Your Kids, the ultimate destination for artistic adventures. Join us as we dive into the wonderful world of children's books with renowned illustrators guiding you step by step. From beloved characters to whimsical scenes, unleash your imagination and create cherished memories together. Whether you're a seasoned artist or just picking up a pencil, there's something for everyone at Drawing with Your Kids. Please visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com, and click on the Drawing with Your Kids link at the top of the page and let the creativity flow. Drawing with Your Kids, where every stroke brings stories to life. Join us right now from the warm and sunny state of Florida. Our guest is here today to celebrate her new middle grade novel, mostly in verse, is called The Trouble with Heroes. Please welcome to the show, Kate Messner. Hey, Kate, how are you?
Hey, Jed. I am terrific. Thanks so much for having me today.
Delighted to have you on. I have a feeling we are going to have a great conversation. As I understand it, The Trouble with Heroes takes place in the Adirondacks.
It does, and that is home for me. I live in northern New York, right on Lake Champlain, just north of the Adirondack Park. But hiking is one of my favorite things to do, and I'm what they call an Adirondack 46er, and that is somebody who has summited all of the 46 Adirondack high peaks over 4,000 feet tall. And these hikes range from, half-day hikes that are maybe 5 or 6 miles with a few thousand feet of elevation gain to 22-mile full-day slogs through knee-deep mud. So a little bit of everything in the Adirondacks.
It's a beautiful, beautiful part of the country. As a kid, we were camping there one time, and my dog got away. I was 11 or 12 years old, and I went into the woods to get the dog. And when we finally met up together, I turned around and said, I ain't in Kansas anymore, and I don't know where I am. And I was lost on that mountain for most of the day.
Oh, no, that's scary.
Yeah. It was. I was happy my dog was with me. What was funny, though, is I heard what I thought was a river. And so I followed that sound. I figured at least I won't be going in circles. It turned out that what I was hearing was a highway, even better. And a state trooper came by and he said, are you the kid from Boston we're looking for? And I said, I'm from Boston and I'm lost. And he said, get in. And I got in, and evidently being in the woods caused us to become kind of smelly. And the trooper said, no, get out. Just keep walking that way.
On second thought.
So we got back, and of course, everybody's happy I'm there, except for my mom. She's mad at me for getting lost. But so enough of my story. Tell us about The Trouble with Heroes. Tell us about this story.
Yeah, well, the main character in The Trouble with Heroes, Finn Connolly, has his own misadventures in the Adirondacks that rival yours, in fact. So Finn is a 7th grader. He's actually about to fail 7th grade. And on the Friday before Memorial Day weekend, he vandalizes a cemetery. He kicks over a gravestone, and it turns out he got caught on camera, and that gravestone belonged to one of the first women to hike all 46 Adirondack high peaks. So Finn's in trouble. He got caught on camera. But when it's time to go to court, the dead woman's daughter makes him this unusual offer. Instead of pressing charges, she'll give him the opportunity to climb all 46 Adirondack high peaks in a single summer. So he climbs 46 mountains by Labor Day. All the charges go away. He doesn't even have to pay for the headstone, which for Finn and his mom, who are struggling a little financially, is kind of a big deal. They are not cheap. So there's just one more thing, by the way. Climb 46 mountains, do it all in a single summer, and he has to take her dead mother's dog, Seymour, along with him. And Seymour is this Bernese mountain dog. He is the drooliest dog you will ever meet in your life. Finn is not a dog guy to begin with. So he essentially finds himself sentenced to hike 46 mountains with a dog he doesn't like. Now, he's not heading out alone. The woman's daughter, Kelly, has arranged for 46ers to accompany him. So there are 3 experienced hikers who sort of take turns, being what he calls his trail nanny. Finn's not thrilled with this situation, but that's where it is. And little by little, he starts to appreciate a little bit of what the mountains have to offer. But of course, the Adirondacks are rugged, as you found out. It's very easy to get lost. You step off that trail for 2 minutes and you're surrounded by trees and everything looks the same. And plenty of disasters await him. So whether or not he will get this done is a question mark through pretty much the whole book.
Well, I love that, and I can absolutely relate to it. Not the kicking over the gravestone part, but you're right. You step off that trail and it's just green and trees, and there was nothing that I could have grabbed onto. Why did you choose to tell this story mostly in verse?
Jed, I had never written a novel in verse before, and so it was not a natural choice for me. And it was not originally on purpose, I guess I'd say. I started working on this book way back in 2015, which was the same year I started climbing the high peaks myself. Now, I didn't do it in a single summer. It took me 8 years to get all these hikes in. But I bring my writer's notebook with me everywhere I go.
Mm-hmm.
And I had sort of a slimmer version of this, a lightweight version for my backpack when I was hiking the high peaks, because you don't want a single pound more weight than you have to have. But like I do when I go everywhere, I brought my notebook, and I found that when I got to the summits, I was wanting to write poetry. It's not entirely unusual. I always wrote poetry as a kid growing up, and have, dabbled with poetry since then, but never a whole novel in verse. And so I had started writing poetry about my own experience climbing the high peaks. But eventually, something kind of weird happened, and poems started coming out that were not in my voice. They were snarky. They were not happy to be there. And as a writer, I've learned to trust the voices that show up, right? When you're writing something and say, oh, whose story is this? Whose voice is this? So little by little, I came to realize that it was Finn I was hearing in my head. And I'll be honest, I think that happened on one of the less lovely hikes where that snarky voice showed up and the complaining showed up. But indeed, that was where Finn's voice started when I was out hiking. And I followed it and, asked those questions that I ask as a writer. Who are you, first of all? Whose story is this? And what would bring a kid who doesn't want to be hiking the high peaks out into the mountains? And what might that kid find there, right? Everybody, I think, finds different things when they set out to do something like that, whether it's the Appalachian Trail or, climbing the high peaks or another series of mountains. People climb for their own reasons. And I was curious to follow and see where that story would lead. And it led to The Trouble with Heroes.
Wow. I think some people listening to this who aren't, who don't create, who don't write, might have a little bit of trouble hearing someone say, I just want to listen to the voice in my head and find out who's talking to me. Like, lady, you're thinking this up. It's your imagination. What do you mean? Who's you're going to introduce themselves?
Yeah, no, it sounds a little woo, right? But, I think writers will tell you that, and of course I understand that this is my creative brain talking, right? All the different parts of the creative brain. But that's how writing works for me. If it's going well, there's either a voice or if it's going real well, there's a movie in my head and I'm seeing things happen and I'm writing down, I get the movie going. And that's what my writing process looks like. And I know writers are all really different about this. And I'm always fascinated to talk with other writers because some of us are much more visual than others. Mm-hmm. When I am writing and it's going well, the process for me involves thinking until I get the movie going in my head. And then once the movie is going in my head, I write down what happens, Mm-hmm. And the same is true for a voice. When you get to know when you invent a character, you come up with a character and you really get to know that character, they really do take on a life of their own and a voice of their own, inside your writing brain. So I know for a non-writer, it maybe sounds a little woo, a little hokey, but that's really how it works, at least for me.
Yeah. Interesting that Finn came to you, in this way at the top of a mountain after a tough slog up the mountain. Had you been thinking of developing a character, a seventh grader?
No, I was supposed to be working on something else, which is always when I get my best ideas. I was actually in 2015, I was in the middle of writing a different novel. Uh-huh. And I needed to finish that, and I had other projects under contract that I needed to work on. And so really for several years, I was just scribbling ideas. And then it was probably 2020, I guess, during the COVID-19 pandemic, that the story really started to come together. And it has a lot to do. So this book actually takes place in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic, certainly in the later days anyway. And Finn's journey is really shaped by his dad. That's what the title, The Trouble with Heroes, alludes to. Finn's dad was a classic hero with a capital H. He was a high school hockey star. He was a 9/11 firefighter who was immortalized in a photograph that went viral, carrying this woman out of the smoke and ash. And then later was a New York City paramedic serving during the COVID-19 pandemic, which is when he died. So Finn, when this story opens, is grieving. He's angry. He hasn't had a chance to grieve because his dad died in the early days of the pandemic when, we couldn't have the usual gatherings and the funerals and the hugs and the big groups of people holding you up. So he's got a lot of grief to process, and grief wears a lot of masks, right? Sometimes it shows up as tears and crying and screaming, and sometimes it shows up as anger. Sometimes it shows up as snark. Sometimes it shows up as laughing. And this book really kind of walks through all of that with Finn.
Yeah. Tell me, as you're creating, you're telling me there are snippets. In 2015, I had this idea and I wrote it down, and then more, and then we kind of put it together in 2020. How do you keep those ideas straight? Do you come home and have a Finn file and you say, okay, this is the start of something, and then another idea comes 6 months later or whatever, and collect those? Or do you just remember, oh, there's something over there I want to check out, and something in that journal over there?
Yeah. Oh no, I don't remember anything unless I bring it all together. So, by the time this book was finished, I was, I had a pile of flimsy, sweaty, mud-smeared notebooks that had climbed a lot of miles with me. But generally, I would get home from a hike and I would just pour everything that I wrote into this file on my computer. So I use a program called Scrivener, which is really great for collecting little snippets of things. And quite often, I am working on a book, collecting ideas, brainstorming, for months, often years, before I actually sit down to start writing that book. And that was very much the case with this book. Every hike I would, get home, I would wash off the mud and, open up that file, dump those scribbles. If I'd written a poem, I would put it in there. Obviously didn't end up using all of those or even most of those. But that brainstorming is really the raw material that I work with when I'm writing a novel. So when it's finally time for me to say, okay, what's the shape of this novel going to be? Where does it begin? What happens in the middle? How does it end? What's the character's arc? I have a lot of raw material to work with.
Yeah. And it sounds like The Trouble with Heroes gives families a lot to talk about. We encourage families to continue to read with their kids after they become independent readers, if not snuggled up on the couch reading aloud, co-reading and sitting down and talking about it on the way to school or around the table. And, I think there's so much that a family can get into here, just starting with that whole idea of grief and, remembering back the 7th graders now were 3rd and 4th graders during the pandemic, and some of them may have known that one of their classmates had a family member who died, and they couldn't go to the funeral because of the pandemic. And just so much. Where would you suggest a family begin in talking about all the different things that come up in The Trouble for Heroes?
Yeah, it's a story that offers a lot of openings for conversation, and I am, so on board with what you do here because, I raised 2 kids who are grown now, but we constantly read stories together. It was the beginning of, I would say some picture book, some novel, some chapter book was the beginning of so many essential conversations that we had in our family. It really is the best opening to talk about important things and emotional things and your values and all kinds of things like that. So I think the natural, what a lot of librarians who've read this book have said, if you have kids who are grieving or have lost somebody, this is a book that'll help them feel seen. And yes, that's true. But also, I think sad stories like this that are not just sad, but lots of other things too, give kids an opportunity to, I don't know, have sort of a dress rehearsal, right? Because nobody who's alive in this world gets out of it unscathed, right? We all are going to experience grief. And, just given the state of our world, our kids have lived through this, this global pandemic. They're living through a lot of political unrest right now. Something like 10 million young people lost parents during the COVID-19 pandemic. And even if a child wasn't touched directly, they knew somebody. And reading stories about, that involve loss, as life involves loss, I think really give kids a bit of a dress rehearsal, right? For how to process emotions and how to talk about it and how to ask for help when you need help. That is a big one. And I think we don't really talk about that enough. And I think books like this also give kids a chance to think about what kind of friend they're going to be when somebody they love loses somebody they love. Because that can be hard to navigate for young people too. And I think those family conversations over stories are at the root of so much of that learning.
Yeah. I love what you said. It gives kids a chance to think about what kind of friend they're going to be, because it very much is a choice. How are we going to, are we going to be there? Are we going to be able to set boundaries? Are we just going to walk away? Hopefully not. But these are really important conversations, and it's a great way for kids to kind of start talking about their own feelings. It's like, well, you're not talking about me, we're talking about Finn. We're not sitting down having that conversation. We're talking about Finn, and slowly but surely some of what our kids are struggling with can come out.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially for boys, I would say, just because talking about feelings is not quite as normalized as it should be for young men. And that is, again, that alludes to the title of this book. There's a poem in here that Finn writes. So I mentioned he's failing 7th grade. One of the reasons he's failing is because he hasn't done the mandatory 7th grade poetry project, which is a collection of poems written about heroes and what it means to be a hero. And when Finn finally does write a sonnet called The Trouble with Heroes, and the last line of that sonnet is, "And heroes aren't allowed to be afraid." And this is this idea that he has grown up with, that the hero is this person who is somehow above human emotion and above human fear and above needing help. And that's such a big part of the story. And I think such an important conversation to have with all of our kids, but maybe especially our boys, because asking for help isn't normalized the way it probably should. I think what you hit the nail on the head when you said it's a safe way to have those conversations, right? When you're reading a story together, you think, oh, what do you think of the way Finn handled that? What would you do? And that way, we're not talking about me, we're talking about this character, right? But you can get at so many important conversations that way. Yeah.
I love to, I imagine you must have had a lot of fun talking and writing about the different, scaling the different peaks for Finn. Did you add in some mishaps that you had on some of your hikes? Did you let Finn experiencing those things?
Absolutely. Yeah. There are, the high peaks, the Adirondack high peaks are just full of surprises. And, not the least of which is that you expect when you climb a mountain, you're going to get to the top and see something great, right? There had better be a payoff. I've been hiking for 12 miles. Surprise, some of the Adirondack high peaks are wooded peaks. So you maybe hike, you've got 4,000 feet of elevation gain, and you are, you've sunk knee deep into mud, and there are black flies that bite you, and they spit a chemical into the bite, so you'll keep bleeding after they bite you, so they can, little vampires in the woods. Just all these tiny disasters that you hike through. And then you get to the top of this mountain, and it's just a muddy patch with a little brown sign tacked to a tree that says Gray Peak, right? So things like that, and Finn's reaction to some of those things are really mirrored a lot of my reactions when I was climbing the high peak. From the times you sink knee deep into mud and wonder if you're going to be able to get out, to the time when you're following the trail and all of a sudden you turn a corner and your trail goes up a cliff that just seems totally vertical, and you're like, well, that can't be the trail. There's got to be around that. But no, you're gonna have to find the handholds and footholds, and all of that really is part of Finn's journey, I think. I know for me, when I was hiking the high peaks, I think my favorite thing about it was that every time I was out on a hike, there was a time when I thought, I'm not going to be able to do this. Mm-hmm. And then doing things that we thought maybe we couldn't do, or that we thought were impossible, hard things, those aren't necessarily impossible things. And I think that's one of the places in life we really find strength. It's one of the reasons I'm such a huge believer in hiking and mountain climbing and rock climbing too, which there's a few notes about that in the book. Also, there's so many parallels with writing, I find. I was working on this book for a long time, a lot of years, and really for a lot of those years not finding my way. And there were several times that I was working on this and I thought, you know what? I am not a good enough poet yet to write this book the way I want to write it. And I put it away for a while, and I worked on poetry, and I took workshops, and I studied mentor texts. And then I would come back to it. And, sometimes I wouldn't even know how the book was going to end. And hiking is a lot like that too. When you set out to hike the Adirondack high peaks, these are wooded trails, and you can't see that mountain you're trying to climb. It's out there 7 miles away somewhere. So you just have to keep following one trail marker to the next. And writing is a lot like that for me too.
Fascinating. I really love it. One of the things too, getting back to having conversations with our kids, I think the whole offer that the woman's daughter makes to Finn could be a really good catalyst for a great conversation about forgiveness, about empathy, trying to put ourselves in the shoes of somebody who might be grieving, and helping to acknowledge that, dude, that's not the way we do it, but also giving the person a chance for redemption.
Yeah. I'll be honest with you. I was a middle school English teacher for 15 years, and some of my favorite students were the guys who showed up kind of angry with a chip on their shoulder that was hiding something else inside. And so often if a kid came into my class, sometimes kids come into class, middle schoolers, and they're a little bit mean. You say good morning and they're kind of mean. And my first response anytime a kid came in mean was, "You doing okay today?" Mm-hmm. And it always took them aback a little bit, right? That somebody saw through that. And I think that's a really good conversation to have. I mean, sometimes when kids are being, unkind, sometimes when kids are angry or they don't want to talk, it's not because they don't want to be your friend. It may be because there's something going on. Maybe they need some time. Maybe what they need is a friend, right? Mm-hmm. So I think having those conversations, I don't know, it's one of the things I love about novels for kids is that, I wrote a book, right? And I put a story in this book, but every single reader is going to come and read this story through a different lens, mm-hmm. right? Somebody who has lost someone is going to read Finn's story from a completely different lens from a kid who maybe has a friend who's having a hard time, or somebody who loves hiking, or somebody who hates hiking. Mm-hmm. And I love that what readers bring to a book and what they take from it isn't necessarily what I thought they would. Mm-hmm. I just love that every family is going to have a different experience reading that story aloud. They're going to be comparing their hikes and sharing memories. Oh, remember that time when we got lost on that trail? Or remember how muddy you were that day? Or things like that. I love that about novels for kids and reading them together as a family.
Yeah, absolutely. What great time. And I'm imagining that hopefully some families are going to be inspired to maybe not climb all 46, but, visit the Adirondacks, or at least go out and hike a hill that's close to their home.
I hope so. I will tell you that our family's best times have been outside, often hiking or exploring nature. And if the book it encourages people to get outside together and have those conversations while they're reading and while they're hiking, that would be a win for me.
Awesome. Kate, please tell us where we can go to find out more about The Trouble with Heroes and find out more about you.
My website is katemessner.com, and there's a lot there about The Trouble with Heroes. There have been plenty of early reviews. A lot of amazing readers have talked about what they thought about it. And we have a starred review from Publishers Weekly, another one from Kirkus, just the first couple that have come in. So you can read all about the book there, and it will come out on April 29th.
Awesome. We've had a wonderful time speaking to the author of The Trouble with Heroes. It's a new middle grade novel, mostly in verse, from our guest, Kate Messner. Kate, thanks so much for being on Reading with Your Kids.
Thanks so much, Jed. What a joy to talk with you, and thanks for all you do.
This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by We're Going to the Dinosaur Forest, written by Marie Nichols. Marie Nichols was recently on my Connecticut Book Festival's podcast, and what a delightful woman. One of the things she said really struck home with me. She said, parents nurture with care, siblings are taught to share, but grandparents embrace the dares. We're Going to the Dinosaur Forest is a colorful, fun-filled book where this grandmother dares to embark on a wild journey with her grandson into the dinosaur forest. It's available on Amazon. It's also available on bookshop.org. You and your kids and you and your grandkids are going to love this book. It's We're Going to the Dinosaur Forest, written by Marie Nichols. Hey families, would you like to share a miracle with your kids? At the Wolf Conservation Center, hope was fading. The endangered Mexican wolves dreamed of a pup, but none had come. Until one tiny miracle changed everything. Meet Trumpet, a real-life wolf pup whose incredible birth brought joy, hope, and a lesson in conservation. Trumpet the Miracle Wolf, written by Leocadia George, is a heartwarming true story that will inspire your whole family. Teach your kids the power of hope, love, and protecting endangered species. Get your copy today and join the wild adventure. Hey, my friends, would you like to bring a little warmth and magic into your home? Let me introduce you to Welsh Mountain Candles, hand-poured on a working Amish farm in Lancaster County. These all-natural, toxin-free candles are made from palm wax with a stunning crystallized glow, rich coconut apricot wax for a creamy finish, and essential oils for a pure, refreshing scent. Whether you're winding down, setting the mood, or just love a great candle, Welsh Mountain Candles are crafted with care and made to be shared. Visit welshmountaincandles.com. Use the promo code JED10 for 10% off your order today. Light up your home with Welsh Mountain Candles, where every candle tells a story. Join us right now from New York City. Our guest is here today to celebrate his new picture book. It's called We Leap Together. Please welcome to the show the author and illustrator, Christopher Silas Neal. Christopher, how are you?
I'm great. Great. Thanks for having me.
I'm delighted to have you on. As I understand it, this book is about moms and their kids.
Yeah. Yeah, you could say that.
Tell us about it, please.
Well, it's called We Leap Together, and it follows a mom and her kid in the city, in New York City, and at the same time, we follow a humpback whale and her calf.
Very cool. Very cool. And what inspired this book? Was it a whale watch trip or watching kids frolic through the park or what?
Well, both of those things, but definitely a whale watching trip that I took with my family in Brooklyn, which many people probably don't know, and I didn't know at the time, that you can see whales just off the coast of the city, right in the bay.
Yeah. It's really, I've experienced a couple of whale watches, and it's they can be long, especially if you don't see a whale for a while. But once you do, once they reach and jump, and it's just incredible.
Yeah, it really is. And you can imagine, seeing where you get all excited because you get these signals, like a little bit of splashing water, or you'll see some birds gather, and you know that maybe some feeding's going to happen. So you're excited, and when they finally breach, and you see this massive animal come out of the water, it's just fantastic. And you can imagine seeing that with the New York City skyline in the background. It was pretty incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right, they are massive creatures. For many years, I did educational magic shows for 35 years. And for a number of years, I was part of the family entertainment at the in the city of New Bedford, Massachusetts. And my performing space was in the Whaling Museum. And I performed under a carcass of a whale. And it just standing underneath it, doing magic. And I felt like in the show, like, these are tricks, but that's really magic. That creature up there, that's so huge. That's just amazing.
Yeah, they are. They're really huge creatures. So I was inspired by this whale watching trip, and I posted about it on social media. Just, my family went whale watching. Here's some pictures. And a school teacher said, "Oh, that sounds like a picture book, Whales in Brooklyn." And I saw that comment and immediately started trying to come up with ideas.
Okay. Where did the idea come from to kind of follow these two mother-child teams?
Well, when I first started writing this book, I literally just had a story about a kid who gets on a ferry in Brooklyn and then sees some whales, kind of like what we did, except for, we did an actual whale watching trip. Mm-hmm. And it was a little dry and straightforward, and there wasn't an extra layer, that extra layer that really makes the story happen. So I started writing, I started drawing, trying to come up with ideas. And as I learned more about whales, I realized how interesting it is that a lot of their behaviors can be interpreted human-like. They do all of these things that are just really intelligent and really social, especially the way a humpback whale will take care of her calf, the mother whale. And they wave their fins and they sing songs, like all of these things that are, just feel creative and intelligent. And so as I was drawing and starting to learn these basic facts about humpback whales, I started making these connections.
Your drawing, is that a way for you to get to know the characters that you're going to be writing about?
Yeah, and in fact, it's really the way that I write stories. Usually, if I try to come to it with the words first, which I do every time, and every time something is missing. So then I just start drawing pictures, and the narrative will come out of the pictures.
Oh, fascinating. I wonder why that is. There's so much about our brains that we don't really understand. We've had guests on who have very serious stutters, but then when they sing a song, nothing. And, we've had experts on, and I'm like, speech experts on, I always ask, how come? And they go, oh, we don't know. I'm wondering what it is that about drawing that helps unlock parts of your imagination.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think scientifically it does sort of signal some specific part of the brain that, is conducive to storytelling, to creative thinking. There's a famous designer, Milton Glaser, who said, drawing is thinking, and it is true. I also came to picture books as an artist first. So I think that's just where I'm more comfortable, is making pictures.
Yeah. That's probably why I can't draw, because I'm not that smart.
Right.
You know, you mentioned that you came to picture books through drawing first. Did you always aspire to be a picture book illustrator?
I've always inspired to be creative and to make things. And as a kid, I like to draw. You know, usually when you're a kid, all kids like to draw, but there's some kids who like to draw and get praised by it by grown-ups, because perhaps maybe it comes easier to them than other kids. And, you know, I was one of those kids where I could draw something and grown-ups would be like, wow, that's really great. But I also loved music. And so I would play musical instruments, and anything that I was into, whether it was movies or video games, when I would do that as a kid, not only would I like to enjoy those things, but I would think, I want to make that. So when I'd watch a movie, and I did this as a kid, I then would go and get a special effects kit together and learn how to do special effects and makeup. And when I played video games, then I would tape pieces of paper together and draw these video games as if, you know, you were going through it. So I always liked to create things as a kid. Not specifically picture books, but definitely characters and stories. I wanted to do animation. I wanted to make films. I played music. So all of these things, yeah.
Interesting. You know, one of the things we've talked about here in the show is that there's so many kids out there, especially when it comes to sports. It's like, well, I'm going to be a basketball star. But if they don't make it to the pinnacle, they kind of, I failed. I gave it up. I like that you didn't necessarily think of yourself as a picture book artist, but you thought of yourself as a creative. And you were willing to kind of go wherever those opportunities lent you.
Yeah. And I didn't have an artist per se in my family. So I didn't have anything to model. And I think a lot of people growing up, they don't realize that these creative pursuits can be a career or a job or a way to make a living. So maybe part of it was like, well, I don't know if I'll be able to do any of this, so I'll just do all of it.
So did you have that person in your life that was saying, oh, okay, Chris, great, you know, you're good at this, and let's keep our fingers crossed it can work, but boy, you need something to fall back on?
I think everyone in my life as a kid and to be honest, as an adult, had that sort of take. Mm-hmm. And I think it came from a place of just wanting to, it was like it came from a nurturing and protective place. Yep. I remember when I moved from Colorado to Brooklyn when I was in my mid-20s, and wanted to just live in a city, but also, pursue illustration and design and all of these things. And I did have some experience as a graphic designer at that point, but I didn't have a job or a place to live. And it was just after 9/11. And so everyone around me was telling me, this is not a great idea. The city is going to eat you alive, I think someone told me once. And I was like, no, this is what I want to do. If I go there and I end up on the street, I'll come back to Colorado and get a job. And
yeah, well, I think you can't. You need to be able to make those leaps. You need to have that confidence in yourself and the courage to kind of make those leaps. Yeah.
Well, it worked out in my case.
Absolutely. You still look alive, the city
yes.
Yet. So tell me, has there ever been, you were telling me earlier that, the kind of ideas come and you get to know the characters as you're drawing them. Has there ever been a character that you started to work on that maybe you still work on that you just, you get the picture down and you love this image, but the story just hasn't come yet?
Every book I make, when I sit down to make the book, it's as if I haven't made a book before. I am just, I start drawing, I start writing. It takes forever to have everything gel. And then I start making final art, and then none of that looks right. It really is a lot of work.
Yeah.
A lot of work. So yeah, it's really hard. And I've made about 26 books at this point. Most of them I've illustrated, and someone else has written the words. I've authored a couple myself too. But yeah, it's not easy making these things.
Do you have a preference? Do you prefer being the author illustrator, or would you just love to bring somebody else's words to life?
I love both. I love them both equally. Both are great opportunities. There's something very special about having your own book that you've written and illustrated, and it's all from you. There's something that feels very personal. But at the same time, whenever I illustrate a book and I partner with a writer, I really take ownership of it, and it feels just as much, my book. So they're both unique and great opportunities. I like doing both.
Was it difficult? Because one of the things that I was really surprised to learn through being the host of Reading with Your Kids is that with a traditionally published book, there is very little, if any, communication between an author and illustrator during that process. Once the manuscript is written and an illustrator has been selected, it's see you later, author. We'll get you the copy when it's ready. Was that hard for you to kind of sit down and think, wow, this is somebody else's ideas, and I want some input from them?
I think in a way, that makes it easier for me to bring my own voice to it. And, when I get a manuscript, my hope is that I do something that the author wasn't expecting. That they weren't expecting, that they probably couldn't have thought of it on their own, but at the same time feels, perfect for the story.
Right. Cool. And We Leap Together. What kind of conversations do you think families can have as they're reading your book? And one of the things that we really encourage families to do is to take a picture walk through a book before they read the words, maybe even cover up the words. Just take a walk through the book and look at the artwork and talk about, what do you think this story is all about? What kind of conversations do you think families can have doing that?
That's a fun exercise, and I think actually this book would probably work well that way. So the way this book is set up, each spread has on the left side the whales, and on the right side, or the right page, are the human characters. Mm-hmm. And on each spread, what they're doing is connected or parallels each other or mirrors each other, you could say. Mm-hmm. So one thing that readers could do with this book is to think about these connections and look at each picture and say, well, what's happening on these pages? What's similar? What are the whales doing that is similar to what the humans are doing?
Yeah. What in your research to create this book and learn more about whales, what was the thing that most surprised you?
I learned an interesting fact that humpback whales will whisper to their calf.
Really?
Yes.
This is I'd like to know how they figured that out.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's just that they make these vocalizations, and maybe when they're with their calf and in their close proximity, the volume and everything of these vocalizations are similar to what we would say is a whisper to humans.
Yeah, well, that is really surprising. What's next from you? Or do you have a project that you can give us a kind of a sneak peek of?
Sure. Well, I'm always writing stories. I'm always trying to come up with new ideas, and I'm usually working on illustrating a book that I've been paired with an author with. So I work on a series called Over and Under with Kate Messner.
Oh, Kate's been on the show.
Oh, right. Great. And so we have several books, Over and Under the Snow, Over and Under the Pond, Over and Under the Wetland is the latest one to have come out last fall.
Excellent.
And we're working on more books. So the next one to come out is Over and Under the Coral Reef.
Ooh, that sounds good. Well, you have an open invitation. Maybe you and Kate can both come back on the show to celebrate that book.
Oh, that would be fantastic.
Awesome. We should tell everybody where they can go to find out more about We Leap Together and find out more about you.
Sure. I have a website, csneal.com. That's csneal.com. I'm on social media. On Instagram, I'm Silas Neal. And I do Blue Sky. And I have a Substack at csneal.substack. I think that's how you do the address. But anyway, so I have a Substack as well. So you can find me in all those places.
Awesome. We've had a great time speaking to the author and illustrator of We Leap Together. Our guest has been Christopher Silas Neal. Hey, Chris, thanks so much for being with us.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Kindness is quite magical, and respect is magical too. When you travel as much as Jet Li does, the magic comes right through. But he's not alone in his quest, he's got some helpers in his crew. 3 dogs that help him stage his show and bring it right to you. Real Magic Podcast, it's so much fun in many ways. Real Magic Podcast, tune in and you'll be amazed. Gently leads the charge as a magician and a bit of a clown. Calvin is a goofy pit bull who never seems to be down. Augie is a grumpy old beagle, or is he really a basset hound? And Daisy is a border collie wiener dog that knows her way around. Real Magic Podcast, it's so much fun in many ways. Real Magic Podcast, tune in and you'll be amazed. Real Magic Podcast, it's so much fun in many ways. Real Magic Podcast, tune in and you'll be amazed.
Hey, we hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids. And we hope you'll join us for the next exciting episode of the show. Hey, if you loved this episode, if you learned something from this episode, if you know somebody that could benefit from hearing this episode, please share the link to the show with those people. It really helps us, and it really helps your friends, and shows them that you care. So please, whatever platform you find Reading with Your Kids on, share that link with a friend. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful, starting with our guest, Kate Messner. Please be sure to check out The Trouble with Heroes. Also want to thank Christopher Silas Neal. Please be sure to check out We Leap Together. I want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Chris Doherty, Rory Grady, Stella Charest, Megan Butcher. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place. And you do that every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.